Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Greetings, return to workers. Now, I know we're deep into January right now, and I'd just like to acknowledge how so many people have had their nose to the grindstone for weeks now. But I'd just like to say thanks to those people for keeping the wheels of the country turning while the rest of us squeeze the last few drops of juice out of our summer break. Thanks, guys. And welcome, one and all, to another episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. And welcome to the bloke who never rests, because there is just so much progress to explore, new gadgets to discuss, and a tangle of technology to tease out. Welcome to the microphone, Matthew Dickerson.
Some people do say in Australia, how long is the Christmas break? And I reckon unofficially it's about from Christmas Day to Australia Day. Now, this podcast goes live the day after Australia Day. So you're talking
from a retailer's perspective there?
No, I'm talking about from people's relaxation perspective. It seems to be that things slow down, and then finally Australia Day comes along, 26th of January, and people go, all right, we should get back into it now. So I think it's appropriate. Your intro
we're
there.
Still good? Okay, we're okay.
Yeah, all right, under control. And I have been doing a bit of binge watching, as you do over the Christmas break.
Yeah, the Christmas break, that's what it's for.
And I watched one the other day on Netflix called Inventing Anna. And I'm a bit out of touch because it was released in 2022 and I've only just gotten around to watching it now. But I'm quite fascinated. Now, I remember watching the movie Catch Me If You Can. Remember that one with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks?
What was his name? And
Frank
Abagnale.
Frank Abagnale Jr., I think it was.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, he did some pretty interesting stuff in conning lots of people. I think he became an airline pilot, a surgeon. In fact, my favourite line from that movie is, "I concur," when the junior surgeons are asking him about something and he's got no idea, and they say, "What do you think?" He says, I concur.
There's an interesting interview where the actual guy is on Johnny Carson, and they interview the guy. This is after he's been released from prison and whatnot. He went on to Johnny Carson and they interviewed him. Yeah, very, very interesting.
So he became a lawyer, he became a college professor, a whole range of things.
Yeah.
But he finally got captured and obviously imprisoned in 1969. Now, some of the things he did, he wrote about $2.5 million worth of checks and cashed those checks. He used to do things where he'd get in his room and almost steam off bits of a passport and put another bit on. So
he was a forger extraordinaire.
He was, in a time when you didn't have electronic records.
Yeah.
So you could get away with lots of physical changes to passports, to checks, a whole range of things. I mean, I remember seeing the movie, don't know how accurate it was, but just he'd get there and he'd colour in and cut out.
He had a check printing machine, I think he produced in the end. So
all that sort of stuff. And I remember talking to a young person one day in one of our businesses, and someone came in to use a check, and this person had never seen a check before. And they were fascinated by this idea that you could just write a number.
Yeah, write a number and
on a bit of paper.
Hand it over.
And that'll do.
It's like an IOU.
An IOU, that's right. Now, I did explain there's a bit of a check in the background that you've got to have the money in the account, but obviously Frank didn't. So back in the 60s, you get away with that. And I thought, if someone had said to me, could someone do what Frank did now in today's environment, I would say absolutely not, because we've got electronic records of so many of our things. So how could you possibly do it? But when you watch Inventing Anna, and again, some of these Netflix series, movies, etc., are not always totally factual. But if you look at that, it was basically in the period from 2013 to 2017 that Anna got away with a whole range of things. And I can say...
So based on a true story, right?
Absolutely right.
I'm not completely familiar with the storyline.
Yeah, so Anna Delvey / Sorokin basically came to New York, pretended that she was an heiress. There was a 60 million euro trust fund sitting in Germany with her angry father, and she couldn't access that yet until she turned 25 or some age. It was in the future, and she traded off that. She would write bad checks. Wow. She would get loans. She got hundreds of thousands of dollars of loans from banks based on her being an heiress. She would forge wire transfers. She would get away with credit cards that didn't work, and someone else would cover the cost.
All on the pretense that she was an heiress.
All on the pretense she was an heiress. And I watched it and I thought, surely this can't be right. And I went and looked up the real story, and the story on Netflix was pretty close to the accurate truth.
Yeah, wow.
And so she just got away with that. And I would have said you couldn't do that now. There would be too many ways. Someone does a wire transfer oh, that'll take a few days to get through. No, it won't. It'll be in your bank account now. It's not going to take a few days.
We've just transferred numbers. That's all we've done.
That's right. She stole a plane based on a wire transfer. She said, yeah, sure, I'll take that plane, thanks. Did a fake wire transfer, and off she went in the plane. I mean, she ran up $30,000 worth of bills at motels. So anyway, quite fascinating, but I'm really fascinated by the fact that you could get away with that in today's environment, not back in the 1960s. I'm not encouraging people out there to do this, but I
but if you have done it, please ring in and let us know how you did it.
Let us know, that's right.
All right, folks, in today's episode, we're getting right into how we'll be getting around in the not-so-distant future. We've got updates on how EVs are going in Melbourne, and we'll show you how in Japan they're designing a whole city around moving people smoothly from place to place. Designing a whole city. My goodness. There's a story about how Nissan EVs are coping in the snow, one from Gentex about driving into the summer sun, and there's more on our autonomous driving future. And some new stuff about smart mirrors for your bathroom even. Now, this episode is set to go off like a frog in a sock, so let's get started. It's not often that you get something for nothing, but Kia and Uber have struck up a doubles team for the Australian Open and are serving up free EV travel for tennis fans this year. Free Uber travel in Kia EVs to the tennis. Matt, what's the catch?
I see what you did there. Doubles, tennis, very well done.
Very rarely do I work those in, but...
So Kia is the major sponsor of the Australian Open, and I know I've been down to the Open. You walk around, they've got some of their cars on display. It's all very interesting from that perspective. But Uber are really trying to get more people to choose the green Uber option. And Australia, we're not great at it. In places like the US and in parts of Europe, over 10% of rides are green Uber rides. But in Australia, less than 5% are green Uber rides. Now, Uber thought, we should be able to do something about this. How can we try and encourage more people to do this? Kia said, we've got some good EVs, maybe we should team up together. So they've got some limitations on it. They've got certain times of the day, certain distances around the Australian Open, certain distances.
So you can't catch an Uber back to Bendigo?
No, you've got a limit of $100. You've got to be catching it within 8 kilometres. You've got to either be going to or from an 8-kilometre radius from the Melbourne Tennis Precinct, and you've got to be doing it between 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. So not when you go to the pub afterwards and get a free ride. But they're doing free ride. So you order a green Uber, you've got to be an Uber One client. You order a green Uber, and hopefully a Kia will turn up because Kia has given Uber 50 Kias to use.
Wow.
And Kia's covering the cost of it. So it's a free ride. And for many people, looking at some of the data from both Kia and Uber, for many people, their first experience, apart from going for a ride with you or me in our EVs, their first experience in an EV is when they catch an Uber. Yeah. So it's a great way for them to get a bit of experience and maybe increase the uptake of EVs in general in Australia. But obviously, Uber want to get to the point where they're getting to the stage where all of their vehicles, this is their target, all of their vehicles will be EVs or some form of green version, so it might be hydrogen, for example, but 2040 is their target. So all Uber rides by the year 2040. One thing I do like is that I've been with people that have ordered a green Uber, mainly through my encouragement to order a green Uber, and up turns a hybrid. And I go, I don't want to get in that. It's not a real green Uber. But, of course, you've got to get in it still. But they
I've heard of coffee snobs, but this is EV snobbery.
This is exactly right, hybrid snobbery. So they are phasing out hybrid vehicles because, again, Uber is saying they're not really how far you want to go. They're a more fuel-efficient petrol vehicle. They're not changing the game.
Yeah.
So they're not there yet, but they will get to the point when enough of their Uber drivers have got EVs that they'll be able to say, yes, you order a green Uber now, it'll be an EV. They're also doing deals with their drivers with companies such as Kia and Uber themselves, where they're offering cheaper finance or better ways to get into an EV for you to do your Uber driving in.
So very clever marketing.
Yeah, so lots of good marketing there. So I think it's good from Kia's perspective, get a bit of exposure to their brand. And the EV5...
Well, it's not going to cost them that much either to send
really.
people around all day.
No, that's right. Your ride's probably, I don't know what the average ride is, maybe $20 in an Uber, so it's not a lot of money. But they've got some nice ones. The EV5's quite a nice vehicle. I saw one at the airport the other day, just looked at the latest EV5, which is a bit bigger version. EVs are typically smaller because they're trying to make them with better range, but they're starting to get a bit bigger now. So, yeah, good move from Kia, good move from Uber. And, again, if you're around the tennis, give it a go.
Ever been driving late in the afternoon and the sun is sitting just on the horizon but dead ahead? You literally have to stare into the sun in order to stay on the road. Now, the windscreen visor is a simple design but a very handy tool for late afternoon driving, but nothing can save you when the sun is sitting at the end of a long, straight country stretch. If you could just fold if you could just fold the visor down vertically but still see through it, well, that would be a simple solution. Matt, tell them about the electrochromic visors.
I will, but I want to talk about me being a bad backseat passenger for a start. Sometimes I'm in a car and I'm not driving, and the sun...
But you wish you were?
Well, always, that's right.
Yeah.
And the sun will be above us. It might be 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and someone folds down their visor. And I say, no, it's designed exactly as you've just described, when the sun's on the horizon to block the sun. It's not designed like a pair of sunglasses to fold it down to reduce the amount of sun in the car. So just get that off my chest first. Now, I wanted to also talk about a few basic items that cars have got that have been there for a long time and we haven't come up with something better. So if you go to the 1914 Model T Ford, it was the first vehicle, the first commercial vehicle, the first mass production vehicle that had a centrally mounted rear view mirror. Now, we've still got those.
Right.
We've got a few extra things in there. We've got a flick or an automatic process that might dim the headlights
I
from
think
behind.
that was very clever of them to think of it all the way back then.
Exactly right. So what did you do before then? You're obviously always turning around behind you to see what was behind you. So pretty clever, but that's something that hasn't changed a lot over all those years. In 1926, Cadillac introduced powered windshield wipers. There were things that you'd scrape across the windscreen before that, but powered windshield wipers.
You just didn't drive in the rain.
Well, you just probably didn't because you probably had no top on your car as well. But they were vacuum controlled, initially vacuum from the engine, and they changed to electric. But really, they haven't changed much in all those years. And the other thing that hasn't changed much is in 1900, the Packard Model B had a dashboard compartment for you to put your gloves in because you are braving the elements with the wind and snow and rain or whatever else hitting your hands on the steering wheel.
That's when you actually needed driving gloves rather than these days if someone's wearing driving gloves, you ask him the question, what sort of person are you?
I've got a name for those sort of people. So you had a compartment to store gloves in which got the name glove box. That's right. So that's pretty much the same now. We haven't changed the glove box much. And the last one, of course, 1931 Ford Model A, that was the first vehicle to feature the internal sun visor. You flip it down, you block the sun when it's on the horizon, and we've been doing that for, well, pretty close to a century until now. So Gentex have now got, as you correctly said, electrochromatic glass in a sun visor. So rather than fold it down, it's opaque, it blocks it or it doesn't. And sometimes when you fold that down, you're getting down, you're just trying to get the right angle just below there and just see the road. And it's
perilous sometimes, and sometimes that visor just does nothing for you.
That's right. Or then, I remember my dad used to do all the time, you'd flip it to the side, for the side window so the sun coming in the side. You'd flip it back if you're driving with the sun at a 45-degree angle. One corner, you're flipping, that's right, back and forth. So this is dimmable smart glass. So basically it's translucent, you fold it down, it's glass, and then it will auto-dim the, I suppose, darkness level, depending on how much sun is hitting it. So it's like a pair of sunglasses. You can still see through it, but you've got the sun dimmed so you can see through it safely, just as if you put a pair of sunglasses on and then take them off again. So that's pretty cool. At this stage, they've only got it with the sun visor, but I can't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to build this into a windscreen.
Yeah, it'd just be the whole windscreen, wouldn't it?
That's right, and it would dim maybe various levels down as you need it. So this particular company, Gentex, we mentioned before, they're using Violagens, which are organic materials, and they darken when they're exposed to electricity. So it's obviously hooked up with electricity. You can manually change it or it can do it automatically. But this same company has already put smart windows in Boeing 787 aircraft. So you kind of think if it's good enough for an aircraft flying through the air at 900 kilometres an hour, it's probably not too long a stretch to say a windscreen could be used with this. Again, at this stage, it's just on visors. But the other thing that I like about this is not only can you do that and stop the sun, but you can also have real-time notifications in it. You can have alerts in there, a bit like a heads-up display on a windscreen. You can have all those on your sun visor, so you can potentially retrofit a car with all these things as well. So
Very cool.
the problem I see is windscreens are becoming so expensive. When I've had a chip in a windscreen lately, it was one of the cars I had a replacement windscreen. It was $5,000 for a new windscreen. And I can remember back in the old days, a windscreen was a couple $100 because it was a pretty simple, maybe even flat pane of glass. Maybe they got a bit curved, but now there's so much technology built into them. And add this in there, maybe even more technology. So maybe that's why they're focusing on the visor rather than the full windscreen. But pretty cool technology, not there yet, ready to be installed in brand new cars, but not that far away. They were showing this off at CES 2025 to say, look what we've got. And again, I can see car manufacturers going, well, we could possibly offer that as a luxury option on one of our high-end cars, or just build it in maybe.
Well, as we've already mentioned, at the tennis in Melbourne, they're going gangbusters, exposing more and more people to EVs. Perhaps the cold feet on some potential car buyers will begin to thaw. And on top of that, now Nissan is stepping up to show that any weather that would otherwise frostbite your toes is no threat to EV performance. Matt, how's that gone for them?
It is interesting. Most people think that hot weather would make an EV worse in terms of its range, but they actually like warm weather. The chemical processes that occur within the batteries are better at warmer temperatures. In fact, you lose some range when you go to cold temperatures, and Nissan recognises this, and there's lots of companies out there doing work, new companies, more traditional car companies, doing work on a whole range of things, but the chemistry in the batteries, I think that's where someone's going to win the day. I had someone the other day talking to me about it, and they said, I'm going to get an EV. As soon as they've got 1,000-kilometre range, that's when I'm going to get an EV. It seems like a sort of a random number to come up with, and I don't know too many cars that get 1,000 kilometres on one tank of petrol.
And, wouldn't you be looking to stop anyway somewhere?
Somewhere.
For a bit of a break somewhere in that 1,000 kilometres?
I'm not sure it'd be safe to drive 10 hours without any sort of break. So anyway, but there are these numbers that people are looking towards. So Nissan have got their nice little module they've built to be able to test out their cars in extremes of temperatures. And the main thing they've been doing is working on the cold temperatures. This little box they put cars in can go from minus 40 degrees Celsius up to 80 degrees Celsius. So there's a fair extreme there they're testing on.
Range.
Yeah, that's pretty good in terms of the range for what we might experience on the planet. But they had one car, for example, that they took it down to 17% battery charge. They parked it at minus 20 degrees Celsius for 24 hours and then pulled it out again and still had 17% battery charge. That was without a battery heater. So that's parking it in the cold, because some people complain that their cars, they park in the cold, leave it overnight.
I can imagine it'd be a real problem in places in Canada and Alaska.
Yeah,
and whatnot. Yeah.
Some of those places you've got some of these cold temperatures.
And Scandinavia, yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. So you park it there and you get there the next day and you've lost 2 or 3% overnight. Well, not great. So they're trying to do that without battery heaters. They're putting some bigger batteries in some of their cars anyway. 91 kilowatt hours is one of their biggest batteries. I know the Nissan Leaf, I've got a Nissan Leaf, and they came out with their 40 kilowatt hour battery and a 62 kilowatt hour battery. So they're getting bigger batteries in some of these as well. And then what they're also doing is just trying to work out ways they can test these in this controlled environment, but also they've been helping some different people. So a British couple, for example, did some testing for them. They drove 30,000 kilometres from the Arctic to the Antarctica to really test out those long range. So real world testing as well as testing in this chamber. The chamber also does solar load simulation to test things like component performance, exterior wear, paint durability, so they can simulate a year's worth of wear, if you like, in a short period of time rather than wait for a year, park it in the sun for a year and go, okay, well, that didn't work out so well. It's long-term testing. Preheating batteries, preheating cabins while it's still plugged in, a whole range of things here. So anyone that says they're no good in the cold and that's the end of the sentence is not really considering all the research that's being done in all of this. So,
yeah, it's also a very finite sort of a statement, isn't it? It doesn't take into account any sort of developments, and as we can see out of this story, that developments are occurring all the time. Yeah,
that's right, and we are getting good uptake of EVs in places like Sweden. So you get some pretty cold temperatures there. There's going to be a lot more research done. Yeah, so it's happening. It's happening now. Be okay with the fact that there's not this finite statement. There is going to be this complete evolution, continued evolution of batteries and EVs.
So I think we've established EVs are here to stay. That's a given. But there are still people out there who are highly sceptical about autonomous vehicles being a thing in this lifetime. Now, there have been more developments in recent months. It seems that autonomous vehicles have been suffering from too much drag, and the tech heads have been on the case to increase the range on these babies to increase their marketability, Matt.
And it is important because you see the vehicles that are autonomous and they've got all this technology sitting on the roof typically. You want to get a great field of view, so you put it up on the roof. Then they'll often have sensors hanging off the sides and cameras and LiDAR and radar and a whole range of things.
All got drag.
Now, they're doing all of that to make the car drive itself. That's their number one priority.
Yeah, the car's got to be able to see for itself, and that's really tricky.
That is. So Wuhan University of Technology, there's some researchers there that have said, well, while everyone's focusing on making sure it can drive, maybe someone should look at the drag. And we've talked about it before. Air resistance is one of those painful little fellas that says, if you're going to double my speed, I'm going to quadruple the air resistance on you. Yeah. And that's important. Even if you go, for example, out on the highway, you're doing 90 kilometres an hour, and then the highway changes to a 110 area, going from 90 to 110 gives you a 50% increase in your air resistance.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way as we drove to Hay, across the Hay Plain, these last holidays. Very interesting, but it was. I did a lot of maths as I was
as you're driving.
As I was driving, but it was really interesting to see how air resistance affects.
Yeah, and it's interesting because if you look at a normal car and you said you're driving a petrol car around town, that'd be the worst fuel economy. When you used to look at the fuel economy, you look at the city rating and the highway rating. The highway rating was always better because it was driving at a nice consistent speed, not accelerating, decelerating. Whereas with an EV, it's pretty much the opposite because the acceleration part is easy for it. And even if you went to the extreme, if you said 60 k's an hour average around town and then go to 110 out on the highway, that's an increase in air resistance of 3.36 times. Yeah. So air resistance is important. Now, that's when they're trying to build the cars to be sleek and smooth and have a low drag coefficient. Stick a bunch of stuff on them, that makes it worse. So they found some things that were interesting. One of the areas that was particularly bad was when they had the roof-mounted sensors, often the manufacturers of those would just whack it on the roof and not worry too much about how it was mounted. But there was typically a gap from the car to the sensors above it. Not much of a gap, maybe a small gap there of 3 or 4 centimetres. But that gap there was particularly bad for air resistance. Bring that down, sit it flat on the roof, and maybe reduce the size of that. They'll find they could reduce the air resistance by a significant amount just by making some changes there.
There's no such thing as like little insignificant details. They're all pretty significant, aren't they?
No, they are.
You're talking about 3 centimetres of difference. Yeah.
And air resistance is one of those tricky things. Get someone to explain how air resistance works, and they say, how about I build a bridge from Melbourne to Tasmania? That might be easier because it is complicated when you start to talk about air resistance. The sensors on the side, so the front side sensors, cameras on there, how you actually have those cameras. Now, if you look at a Tesla, for example, they've got a sensor built in or a camera built into the B pillar, but it's inside the B pillar, so it doesn't stick out the side. But some of these have got cameras that stick out the side. Just those cameras out the side makes a difference. I'm not sure if you've seen the Hyundai that's taken away the side mirrors and basically using cameras for side mirrors with a little screen inside the door. And the idea there is to reduce that air resistance of those mirrors out the side. That's not much, surely, but it does make a difference.
Right.
So all these different things. So we're getting there, but when we add this drag, that obviously reduces the range of EVs, and that's what everyone seems to be focused on. So if you're going to get an autonomous vehicle, you want the range to be as good as possible. Expect to see a few of these things change to the point I think you'll see an autonomous vehicle, you won't even know there's a bunch of equipment on the roof because it'll just look like it's got a taller roof. It might look like an SUV when it's really a sedan, but in that extra bit in the top, that'll be where all this equipment is built in. So it's slowly changing there. Let's get the autonomous working first, but then this is an important part of it.
It's exciting times, though. It's exciting times.
Here's your chance to grab a free copy of the latest Tech Talk compilation book in 3 easy steps. Step 1. Listen to any Tech Talk episode, like this one right now. Step 2. Leave a review on your favourite podcast app. Step 3. Email a screenshot of your review to freebook@techtalk.digital with your name and address. The first 20 emails each week until the end of January 2025 will each receive a free book. Don't wait. You are listening to this podcast right now. Leave a review and send that screenshot to freebook@techtalk.digital. Tech Talk, your weekly gateway to the tech world.
Here's something for you. Have you heard of the Woven City in Japan? The car manufacturing juggernaut that is Toyota have started a new concept that goes well beyond car building and is seeking to explore futuristic options for moving people about in general. And they're building a futuristic city from scratch. Matt, this is when reality catches up to science fiction.
Or is it a cult? I'm a bit worried about this. This is Toyota saying, let's really explore what we can do in an holistic way. So they've got the Woven City, as you correctly said, and people that live there, 100 residents at the moment, are called weavers. Now, that's apparently a bit of a throwback to the start of Toyota when they were doing manufacturing of loom equipment, as in weaving clothes. So they're weavers in there. They're in there now. The whole idea of this is to redefine mobility, encompass the movement of people, goods, energy and information. You want to be environmentally conscious and you want to be human-centric. It just starts to sound like something that if you told your mum and dad you were going to live in the city, they'd be a bit worried about you. Are you ever coming out again, darling son or daughter?
So it's got cult written all over it. You said it.
It does. It does. So they want people to come along and they want startups there. They want universities there. They want to work on innovations in air conditioning and food culture. They want coffee experiences. They want education technologies, all of these things. Now, eventually, the plan is to have about 2,000 people there. Again, 100 at the moment. The next stage will have 360 and then eventually get the stage where there's 2,000 people. Now, they'll be working on how to make sure that people can move around on land, on sea, in the air, and even another company called WBYT, is working on space mobility. So it's all about mobility and how we can basically solve our problems with a city built from the ground up rather than solve our problem by just having more efficient vehicles. Now, is this a pivot because Toyota's so far behind in the EV race?
I was thinking that when I was reading about it initially.
They want this to be a prototype for urban developments. Now, the problem you've got some big cities out there that are already built.
So what are you doing? Yeah, you're going to knock parts down so you can rebuild them.
Or build other ones from scratch and ignore those cities that are already there.
That needs space, doesn't it?
It does. And some of these countries are talking
they're
about...
eyeing us off in Australia here because we've got a bit of space.
Maybe. So, of course, there are autonomous vehicles as part of this. But when they build the city from the ground up and they design an autonomous vehicle to go around that city, we know autonomous vehicles work okay in that environment. It's when you've got unknowns, when you've got, take me to Jimmy's place up the road and there's kangaroos and corners and pedestrians, that's when autonomous vehicles get a bit tricky. But in a known environment, all good, keep an eye on it. I'm not sure where it's going to go. I'm not sure how the people are going to escape from this city, but we're there for you, okay? We're there for you.
There's a movie called A Logan's Run from back in the 70s, I think it was. Go and check that out, folks. We live in the age of information and misinformation, of course, and that gift has come about all because of the way we have accelerated our ability to communicate. So in Melbourne, they've dedicated a museum to this, taking us on an interactive ride from Morse-coded telegrams to smartphones. The National Communication Museum will bring a deeper understanding and hopefully a greater appreciation for what we have today, Matt.
And this is only just open. I'm actually in Melbourne in a couple of weeks' time, so I'm going to go and have a look at this. And they've got some of their exhibitions initially only running through till March. So if you're down in Melbourne, have a look at it. But it does go back. It's in a repurposed 1930s telephone exchange building, so it goes back and uses that for a start.
Nice choice.
Yeah, that's right. And they've got cable braiding. They've got notes from technicians there. They can have people, visitors come along and interact with manual phone exchange. I love a story from my wife. When she was at boarding school, she lived in a very small town, less than 1,000 people there, and they still had a manual phone exchange when much of the rest of Australia had moved over to PSTN, the public switch telephone network. And so her phone number, if she told her friends when going home at holidays, for example, she said, give me a call. I've got to work in my dad's shop over the holiday break. the phone number is 1. That was it. And a friend would look at it and say, how do we ring 1? We can't be on the phone and ring 1. No, you've got to ring the exchange for our town, and you'll get a person, and they'll say, what number do you want? And you'll say, number 1, thanks. And then they'll patch you through to number 1.
See, I can remember some of my earliest memories, is picking up the phone and there was an operator on the end. I can remember talking to an operator.
Yeah, scary, isn't it?
I did feel naughty because I didn't know what to say to the operator, so I hung up immediately and hid under the bed. But I knew that we had a 3-digit phone number back in those days. Yeah,
and the funny part was, I know, and again, talking to my wife, if she'd ring home to talk to her mum and dad while she was away, she'd get the operator and they'd say, oh, no, your mum and dad aren't home at the moment. They're over at Mary's place. She's got a party on. I'll put you through there. So
of course, the operators there were the town gossips, and they knew everything.
Everything that was going on. So you've got a bit of a throwback. Again, imagine showing a young person that this is how it had to work. You unplugged this and you plugged that in there manually to send that signal through to that particular phone. So they've got things like that. They've got, I suppose, what I'd call instruments of surveillance, so things like Enigma machines, audio bugs from police. You've got some modern technology in there, or more modern data centres, undersea cables, satellite technologies, explaining how some of the things work now. Because in the old days, you could see some stuff. Yeah. You could see that telephone exchange. Now, it's all a bit hidden. How does it all work? Right. It's all magic.
Yeah, that's right. These days, everyone's just got a magic box and it does what it wants to do. And a lot of people don't care either way. It's just the magic box. But there's an evolution there.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting to see where we've come.
They've even got Commodore Amigas there, so going back to some of those old things. So I think it's a really good way.
It's interactive, so you can play them, right?
I hope so. I'll tell you in a couple of weeks' time, but I hope so. But it really shows that shift from visible technology to our seamless hidden communication tool. So I'm keen to have a look at it. Again, if you're down in Melbourne, go and have a look. I think it'll be something really good to visit with people from distinctly different generations. So people from very old generations and young generations. So people from older generations could show how things worked and talk about that, and the younger generations go, no, we do this now. It all just happens magically. So quite fascinating.
On the back of the enormous success of the McGrath Foundation cricket test in Sydney in the last month, the war on breast cancer continues in a positive direction, even more so now that AI has been enlisted into the frontline battle. Matt, we've talked about how AI can look very deep into details. It must have some fantastic potential in breast cancer screening, surely.
And the main thing here is getting enough data. Now, we are scared about AI taking over the world, taking over us, being in command of all of us, but AI can be used for incredible good. In this particular study that was done by the University of Lübeck out of Germany, they had 200 certified radiologists. They had scans of 461,818 women from 12 different sites across Germany, and it went over 2 years in terms of those scans. And then the radiologists used all of that data to say, I would like some help with scanning or not like some help in scanning. You've got a big enough sample space, the data should give you some pretty similar information. Now, what they found out of it was that when AI assisted detection of breast cancer, there were 6.7 cases per 1,000 scans where breast cancer was found. When it was left to the radiologists, the specialists, the experts, the humans that have been doing this for years, they found 5.7 cases. So an extra 1 case per 1,000 scans. So that's not bad in terms of
that's
AI picking up.
excellent. I mean, and that's one lady that would be extremely grateful, I would say.
Absolutely right.
From an early detection.
Now, the other part about this is a few things, I think. One is AI doesn't get tired. AI doesn't have a late night. AI doesn't sit there and go, I've been doing this all day. I'm so over this. AI just does what AI does. Humans can make mistakes. AI can make mistakes as well, but humans can make mistakes based on human error, all the fallible things that we have with humans. The other part is that you've got a human, a radiologist, who is using all their experience they've got, which might be an incredible amount of experience, but it can never match all the experience of AI being shown picture after picture of yes, no, learning from those and then looking for those same markers and then going from there. The other really good part about it is that you can take experts, radiologists, and say, when we find a case, now you can help what to do going forward rather than spending your valuable time looking through it. Because the other part was the speed. When you used humans only, they were taking about 30 seconds to do a scan. When you're using AI, and this was even just using humans and AI help, it reduced to 16 seconds. Once you get to the stage where you can just rely on AI completely, then I imagine that would be 16 milliseconds to actually go through and look at those.
Yeah,
so
wow.
we're seeing more and more of this. This was the biggest trial that I've seen so far, where you're just saying, let's focus on one thing, let's get the scans, let's get the information, and really see if we can make a difference there. Of course, there's no reason you couldn't use this and roll that across the world, have a centralised AI tool, and in countries where we don't have enough radiologists, as long as you've got the scanning equipment there, it can be uploaded to a tool and, yep, there's your 6.7 cases per 1,000 people you've scanned in a lower socioeconomic country, a third world country, a poorer country that doesn't have all the medical facilities the same as we do.
Such a wonderful improvement in the prognosis there.
Yeah. So, and expect more and more to come along the same line.
Now, from a science teacher's perspective, microscopes can be a bit of a pain in the bum. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for hands-on learning, but things go wrong and expensive equipment can get easily damaged with a class of 25 or 30 students. To make things worse, a while back, manufacturers realised that it wasn't profitable to make these tools easily repairable, like so many things these days, frustratingly. Objective lenses are disproportionately expensive as an individual item, and gear mechanisms are not easily replaced. Matt, microscopy needs an upgrade to restore a bit of practicality.
So, do you know roughly what you would pay for a microscope?
So I think we're looking at, for a decent one for senior students, we'd be looking at about $600 to $700, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, although I haven't been through the catalogue recently. But, if you need to replace an objective lens, that could be $300 or $400 just alone,
Just
isn't
that.
it? Yeah.
And you try and have, if you're in a biology class, every student's got
you'd have them
microscope
in a group of three, or three, maybe four, perhaps. But
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So
two to three, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, and that's part of this whole process here. This is the world's first fully 3D printed microscope developed by researchers at the University of Strathclyde in the UK, and they estimate the cost to build this, to actually make this, is about £50.
Right.
So that's for the whole microscope. Takes 3 hours. Even the lens itself, you don't need the expensive glass. As you said there, the glass itself can be an expensive component.
Yeah, right.
They 3D print from clear plastic the glass.
Right.
So, or the lens, it's not glass, obviously.
Yeah.
And they said that some of these microscopes can cost in the order of £1,000 or more. But
Yeah.
I accept what you're saying there. In terms
Oh,
of
well, yeah.
microscopes
If you're looking for a university model, then you might be looking over $1,000 or so. Yeah, I guess so.
And what they did with this was they said, we want to use off-the-shelf standard 3D printer. So you might say, well, that's great. It's £50 for the microscope, but you've got a £50,000 printer to actually print that. But no, they used off-the-shelf hobby-grade 3D printers, which I know in Australia you can buy for hundreds, or a good hobby one for maybe $1,000. But that's for one 3D printer. Then let you start pump these out, and then of course you've got all of this as open source, so people can use that, they can share this information, they can share the designs, and people can even improve on those designs and say, I've got one here that's slightly better now, let's go and use that. So what a great way, in particular for students, I was thinking,
Absolutely, yeah.
use their educational process to print the microscope in the first place, and then now you can actually use the microscope in their biology class.
And as I said, damage just happens. So if they get damaged, well then you just grab yourself another $60 microscope and you're done.
And away you go.
But there's a guy that I know who comes around and repairs them, but he always talks about the old ones. The old ones had interchangeable parts and you could fix them easily enough. Now you just can't fix them. You've just got to replace the whole unit. And we've gone past the age of replaceable parts, unfortunately.
We have.
Bring on 3D printing.
Bring on 3D printing, and bring on 3D printing for a whole range of things, because I wouldn't think of a microscope. I think it needs to be precise. It needs to have it done in some sort of high-level factory to get absolutely precise, but no, 3D print it. Now, again, I'd imagine if you're doing some high-end research, you still probably want an expensive model that does things pretty well. But if you're looking at a classroom, they showed examples of people looking at blood samples, mouse kidney tissue. So if you look at things like that, this sounds like it's probably good enough, especially in that learning environment. Even though they had some people from the University of New South Wales being quoted saying it's good enough to use in the first year biology, for example. So again, you've got everyone in the classroom being able to use a microscope and be able to get some information back out of it. So
and there are schools out there with aging microscopes sort of that have gone bung or whatever, and so it's just easier to bring up an image on this, on a computer screen these days than it is to pull out the microscopes. So people will defer to that. But, it's that hands-on learning, that playing with the toys that can really engage students, and I can imagine that this is going to take off.
Well, and someone plucks out the hair from their head and puts it on the microscope, all those sort of things, discovering different things. Yeah. That's part of the scientific process of discovery.
Yeah. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the healthiest of them all? The latest tool to be badged with the smart prefix is the humble bathroom mirror. Gone are the days where you just have a shave, brush your hair and apply your makeup. The modern smart mirror should be providing you all the morning health metrics as well. Matt, this will either be a great start to your day or the polar opposite. I can just see it now.
I actually think this is...
You're looking tired and run down.
That's right. Go back to bed. I actually think this is for males because males don't like going to the doctor. I think females are better at saying something's wrong. I'll go and visit a doctor. And I think it's part of that thing where males don't ever want to be told anything by anyone. Don't give me the instruction manual. I'm not going to read that. Don't tell me how to get there. My sat nav, I know how to get there via a shortcut. And males don't want some doctor telling them that they need to go and change their diet, change their lifestyle, do whatever.
Get a spot looked at.
Yeah, all those sort of things. So this, having a mirror, I reckon males would be a bit more open to the idea of some technology telling them that they need to change their lifestyle, lose weight, maybe...
I reckon you're onto something there.
Do something. I'm not sure whether people would be that comfortable standing in front of a mirror naked, knowing that it's technology, saying... Who else is looking at this out there? Now, I'm sure no one is. They've got better things to do with their time, but that might be one concern. But it's got a whole range of analysis it can do. So it can measure heart rate, blood pressure, ECG scans to detect atrial fibrillation, metabolic health, sleep quality, post-exercise recovery metrics, a built-in assistant answers health-related questions, and it uses data from other devices from the same brand to actually use some of that as well. So you can stand on some scales and that'll link back to that. So
your smartwatch or your smart ring might be giving off some
all of
metrics
those,
there,
tile that together. And again, I would say to people, use all of this. And then once you use that, maybe go along to your doctor and say, my mirror told me that I looked a bit fat. What do you think, Doc? What do you think I should do about it? And maybe you'd take it a bit better coming from a mirror than a doctor. Maybe,
just... When you start smashing stuff because you're cranky with the what the mirror's telling you, it's an expensive mistake. So just back off on that.
And it does come to the mirror on the wall, doesn't it? The fairy tale.
Yeah.
But it's getting to the stage where sometimes things in comics, in fairy tales, are real. So maybe if they're programming this correctly, you do have to address it with mirror on the wall. Am I too fat? How's my health looking today? Mirror on the wall. So that would make sense. But it's really targeting, I think, tech-savvy people, maybe health enthusiasts, or maybe people who think, yeah, I'm okay, but maybe I should get a second opinion, get an opinion from the mirror. I don't know how able you are to have lots of different people use it as well. So friends come around and, hey, just duck into the bedroom, get your gear off and stand in front of the mirror. I'm not sure how comfortable it'll be. I'm not sure if people will be happy with that, what sort of party they were going to. I'm not
One
sure.
step closer to being Tony Stark, though, I tell you.
Yeah, that's right. Getting a whole analysis of your body there. So it sounds good.
Very good. And that's all we have there today, folks. Please fold up your tray tables and move your seats into the upright position. We'll be bringing this baby into land. And thanks for your U-Butte rip-snorting tech talk, Matt.
Now, this is the first episode of our third century.
Hey!
This is our 201st episode, so going quite well. Season 5 we're into now, so lots of back catalogue for people that just stumble across us now. And, of course, people have heard the ad during the program that I've still got the free book offer going at the moment. So
awesome.
Getting those
Dive into
reviews
that,
coming
folks.
in. Yeah, so take advantage of that.
It's a great read.
Yeah, thank you.
And, well, I reckon today you've got more to add to your next book, more than you can poke a multi-pronged stick at today. And I'm off to book my ticket to the Woven City and join a cult. Thanks for tuning in today, folks, to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. We're rolling into 2025, gathering momentum, and we hope that you're on board for the ride over the next 12 months. I'm your host, James Eddy. Looking forward to your company again next week when we bring you another freshly unwrapped episode. Don't forget to share the good news with your friends and bring them along for the ride. The more the merrier. See you in another week's time.